If you want to know how crazy nutty guitar collecting can get, go to Hollywood.
They could mortgage your house and go out and buy a $100,000 guitar.
And they did.
You're in the studio and it's not going right.
Can you try one more time?
Yeah, sure.
What do you do?
And Kim says, oh, let's burn some incense and just have a blast. It's about 7 o'clock at night. So we burn the incense. I'm sitting there. Same thing, nothing. Just except it stinks in the studio, right?
Once you're bitten by the guitar bug, you're hooked for life.
It's still the most memorable thing I've ever seen, you know, and it's just that feeling, you know, the sexiest woman you've ever met, but she marries you, or you buy her.
Guitar Center is a musical instrument superstore chain for guitar fanatics. Their world-famous vintage room located in Hollywood is the epicenter of the West Coast guitar culture. These two guys, they're the Burst Brothers, legendary vintage guitar salesmen. Dave Belzer, a player, teacher, and lover of Les Pauls. Drew Berlin has played guitar for everyone from Grateful Dead to Little Richard. Vintage guitars are his passion. They are not brothers, and their last name is not Burst.
The name comes from sunburst color of a Les Paul from 58 to 60. They were Les Paul standards with flame and sunburst finish, and the slang term for those is burst. And so because of our passion for these guitars and everything, we just decided to become the Burst Brothers. And it seemed to make sense.
The Guitar Center in Hollywood is the go-to music store if you want to buy a really cool instrument. Their vintage room is filled with expensive gems, but, fittingly in Hollywood, it also looks like a set, a carefully designed backdrop for the featured players, the guitars.
This room was kind of a dream to create an environment that people could come into as more of a museum than necessarily a place to buy and sell. You know, bring in a Hollywood set designer, create this kind of early American Western type of theme to go along with the companies that have been here, you know, for 100, 150 years, Martin and Gibson. And to bring this to the people that would come into the store.
Like everyone else in the vintage guitar market, the Burst Brothers rode the spike in values as well as the collapse.
I think the vintage market really started in the late 80s, and it had a slowly gradual increase on a yearly basis. And then I kind of look at 99, Eric Clapton had an auction at Christie's, and he put up 104 or 5 of his personal guitars for sale. And I think that kind of started a little bit of a buzz for guys to start to jump into collecting, and started to somewhat follow the housing market in the late 90s or early 2000s. When the housing market started to really jump people's values in their houses, guitars went along with it.
And they could mortgage your house and go out and buy a $100,000 guitar.
And they did.
And, like the housing market, vintage guitars that had been flying off the shelves were suddenly gathering dust.
I think some of the guitars got kind of pricey, and it was difficult for people to afford them. Players that just wanted a really great vintage guitar to play. Collectors really spiked the market, and a lot of guys that really were buying guitars so they can turn them around and sell them immediately didn't help either. But the market leveled out now. It bottomed out, and now it's coming back pretty strong.
The Burst Brothers specialize in vintage guitars. The instruments that were made in limited quantities and actually disappear for decades at a time into collectors' closets.
Like this guitar is completely original, and it was used very minimally by the original owner that we got it from.
Kind of what we call almost an under-the-bed guitar. It pretty much sat under there since 1957.
It was pretty common in the 70s and 80s for guys to bring their guitars into guitar repair guys and have the tuners changed, have it refretted, maybe make a couple of modifications. The ones that never had that done, they now are worth more in the collector's market because they're absolutely original as they left the factory.
The most expensive guitars are and will continue to be the best examples of the most productive years of the best-known manufacturers.
The most expensive consistently would be a late 50s Les Paul Standard. And we've sold them anywhere from the $250,000 to almost $500,000 for one guitar.
This is one of the first Les Pauls with PAFs. It's called a PAF Standard Gold Top. Before that, it had P90s. So this is an early model with black parts and dark back, and it's a 1957.
This is really the first Les Paul model with humbucker pickups, and this is probably one of the very earliest ones too. So this is really the beginning of what the modern Les Paul is today. You know, you're looking at 150,000 or so in that range there. Here is a 64 Stratocaster, maybe 65 Stratocaster. You know, bolt-on guitar, bolt-on, screwed-on parts, not like a Les Paul where you have a joined neck and everything is kind of built, you know, from a luthier standpoint. This is more, you know, assembly line erector set put together. But the fact that this is a custom color, anything other than Sunburst is considered a custom color with Fender. So this guitar, say in Sunburst, might be a $15,000 guitar today in excellent condition, but in this color, it pretty much almost triples. Yeah. You know, this is a rare color, so you're probably looking at $40,000 to $50,000.
And it happens to play good and sound good too. So it's got all the factors that are important. Really clean, really rare, and sounds great.
Sunburst Les Pauls are unique because every top is a little different. The type of wood that's on the top, how figured it is, this is not a particularly figured one, but some of them have very wide flame and different types of grain going through them, and that will affect the value. A highly this guitar being very plain is probably in the $200,000 or $250,000 range. But if the top on this was highly figured, it would double almost in price.
Even as truly distinctive and original vintage guitars disappear into far-flung collections, Drew and Dave are convinced the market will not evaporate. If anything, it will get stronger.
I think a lot of it has to do with, as we get older, we want to go back to our childhood and go back to the things that made us happy when we were a kid. There's so many people in that 40s or 50s age that still dream about having that guitar that Eric Clapton had, or Stevie Ray, or whoever it might be, their favorite artist, and that doesn't go away. That dream, that passion just doesn't go away.
We started together and we ended together.
Yeah, that was...
That's the first time.
Right. Even if slightly out of tune. Hey, boys. But in tune or not, the passion doesn't stop there.
So now I've got one Strat and one Les Paul, but now I need different colors as well, because I'm obsessed.
Just because you play guitar, that doesn't mean you have to covet them, spend excessive amounts of money on them, fixate on them. But in the case of Andrew Cole, it seems he just can't help himself.
It's like a drug, isn't it? You know, when you get something that you love. Once I got the first one, which I was obsessed with for months and months and months. The obsession wears off, unfortunately. Even though I still love it to bits, you want the other one that you really wanted.
Andrew Cole is what industry insiders call a comer. With his debut album, Why We Wonder, now firmly under his belt, he's trying to carve out a career as a singer-songwriter. Though born in Canada, Andrew Cole spent his teenage years in Liverpool, England. And not the swish part either.
I used to go down to this local guitar shop and I saw this bright white guitar. It was a Gibson Les Paul and it was just all white with gold hardware. And I'd go there every day, like after school, and just stare at it. I'd come home and like mention it to my parents over and over again, just in the hope that one day I'd get it. And for one Christmas, my dad took me in and he said, "We're gonna get this guitar for you." And it was like, I think I slept. I fell asleep with it in my arms for about 2 months, I think. Just obsessed with it.
As you can see, it doesn't stop there.
I would actually get obsessed with going into guitar shops and just seeing what I could find and what I could get my hands on. And I found another one and I wanted, now I wanted this one, now I wanted a Strat. Because now that's like the other side. Now we're Hendrix and Pink Floyd and Jeff Beck. So now I've got one Strat and one Les Paul, but now I need different colors as well, because I'm obsessed.
Cole's collection and his career as a musician grew together.
I would play every pub in England like 4 times a week, 5 times a week. I was one of the hardest working musicians I think England has ever had, just for guitars.
Recently, he's teamed up with musicians like Tom Cochrane. But before that happened, the guitars were an entree, a calling card that helped him open some remarkable doors and generate some strong memories.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reminiscent thing. It reminds you of who you are, right? The sticks and stones of what you are, which is amazing. It's like going through a photo gallery, looking at old pictures. Like, this is a weapon of mass distortion. And it's the shiniest guitar I've ever seen. This is the original Joe Satriani 10th anniversary Chrome Boy, which was given from Ibanez. And it's the heaviest guitar because it's the first time that they learned how to dip a guitar in chrome with a wooden body without it going on fire. And it's a pretty magical thing. And I use this on the record. Everything here was used on the record. This is a Dave Gilmour Stratocaster neck on a champagne gold body with Seymour Duncan pickups in it. And this is a sort of a classic rock guitar. You play beautiful lead lines on this, and it's just gorgeous from Fender, a little Stratocaster. This is an absolutely mint 1969 Epiphone Casino, John Lennon edition, signed inside, and it's got a walnut back to it. And this is your classic revolver guitar, just absolutely gorgeous. This is my little gem. It's completely hollow. That's what makes it quite unique. All the casinos were all hollow. If you sat on that or pushed it in any way, it would just crumble like balsa wood.
And sometimes the memories are a bit more personal, if somewhat strange. Steve Vai has played with everyone from Frank Zappa through Whitesnake to Ozzy Osbourne. One of those CGGs, certifiable guitar gods.
He knew for sure I shouldn't have been backstage, and he said, how the hell did you get back here? And I said, I just waltzed through with your crew with my girlfriend, and and I'm here now, so what am I going to do? And he was like, well, don't ever do that again. There's a backstage pass, there's a laminate, come to a show properly, and don't mess with my staff kind of thing, which was awesome. I was getting kicked out, and then he said, now bugger off.
After being ejected by Steve Vai, Cole reacted the only way he knew how. Buying a Steve Vai guitar.
I'll grab it for you and have a little look at this one. and it's from Steve Vai's line of Gems, the Gem guitar. It was what he always wanted in a guitar. You know, it had the floating tremolo, so you could bend. It doesn't have the whammy bar in it, but you could bend up and down, so you could pull notes flat and sharp at the same time, with this sort of scooped out back to it. And the monkey grip, because Vai is obviously a crazy virtuoso, so he would hold it with one hand and do all the legato lines and the finger tapping and all that mad stuff, which you could always want. And it's just a gorgeous little, it's a gorgeous little thing.
Then there's the white Strat, signed by Slash.
Slash was doing a book signing in Toronto, and I basically pushed my way to the front of the queue, and they said that they weren't, he wouldn't sign guitars because he's not one to sign guitars. And I just said, this is my first guitar. You're the reason why I picked up a Les Paul of this caliber, and I'd love you to sort of deface my my first musical present from my father. I said, okay, thanks very much. You know, I'll let you go now. And he said to me, he's a very gracious man, and he said, well, where are you going? We'll just have a chat for a bit. What kind of music do you do? And we spoke for a bit, and it was really cool.
Andrew Cole captures moments and personalities through his guitars, and he'd be the first to admit the guitars don't make the player.
And everybody's guitar is different, and they all sound different from people's fingers. Everybody sounds different. I've picked up famous people's guitars before through the same amp that they've made tones that everyone would know, and it just sounds crap when I play it. So the sound of a memorable guitar comes from one's fingers.
And how does it feel when your fingers make that little bit of magic?
Monkey Bars was our hit in the 80s. And I'm sitting in my little Stingray, my 63 Corvette. I turn on the radio and I hear Monkey Bars. Life couldn't be better. It was just beautiful. Try that again.
Even after 30 years, a Tough Riff is still a tough riff.
That's not even right either. Can you try one more time?
Yeah, sure.
Again.
Steve Shelsky has been hammering away at this riff since his days as a guitarist and songwriter for the rock group Cony Hatch back in the 1980s.
It's going to be really hard for me to play on an acoustic guitar. Maybe I should just try this. Maybe I should do this on the electric.
It was the era of big hair, tight pants, and metal rock. Each band member was young and keen to become stars. They had that most precious of music commodities, a recording contract with a Canadian company called Anthem Records. Anthem was the home of Rush and my old band, Max Webster, and was churning out hits way above its weight class. The solo appeared in the middle of a song called Monkey Bars. It was written by Shelsky and his bandmate Andy Kern. It was on their first album, a monumental milestone in the life of the band, and added all kinds of pressure to the recording sessions.
More or less, that was it. A little sloppy, of course, but it's been a few years since I played this guitar. It's a little different than the other guitars I have.
Cony Hatch was an Ontario-based bar band that caught a break. They landed a recording contract. Their single Monkey Bars would become one of the band's most popular numbers and guitarist Steve Shelsky's signature performance piece. But during the song's recording session, which I was tapped to produce, Steve's solo was not coming easily.
So we record the bed tracks, we record the vocals, we do all the tracks. And it comes time to do the overdubs, just as guitar solo. And I'm noodling away, playing around with it. And I'm just not happy with it. It's just not working for me. So Kim Mitchell, a great producer, decides that it's time to bring the incense out. So we're alone in the studio. Kim's in the control room. I'm sitting there out in the on the floor, and I got headphones on. And Kim says, "Let's burn some incense and just have a blast." It's about 7 o'clock at night. So we burn the incense. I'm sitting there. Same thing, nothing, just except it stinks in the studio, right? So I'm thinking, okay, Kim, that's not working. So let's crack a couple beers. So we do that, and that seems to be a little bit better. So now we have incense and beer, and it's still not working. So Kim says, okay, Steve, what about all that jazz stuff you noodle around with? Why don't you do something like that? Sort of semi-facetiously, I take a song that I played and play it in the wrong key exactly as I played it when I noodle around when I'm waiting around doing nothing, and play it against the track, and he records it, and it turns out to be The Soul We Keep. I mean, I had to finesse it a little bit, but it was so bizarre and so abstract to play this piece of music against this rock riff that it was unique.
To get the sound that cradled the riff, Shelsky constructed his own guitar from off-the-shelf parts.
This is an unusual guitar for a rock band. The guys back then, Van Halen, AC/DC, they were using SGs, they were using Stratocasters, some guys were using Telecasters, but this had a real raw sound to it. It's a real Frankenstein guitar. The neck is off an early 50s Fender Telecaster. It doesn't even have Telecaster, I think it was a no-caster. The body, again, probably from mid to late 50s of parts guitars I had. Front pickup is off a 65 335 guitar. The back pickup is some 1980s, circa 1980s DiMarzio pickup, or even Seymour Duncan, I'm not even sure. So it's a sort of a Frankencaster, as I'd say. So it's pretty much worthless as a collector's item right now, but to me it's priceless because it's my Monkey Bars guitar.
Cony Hatch never really hit the top. By the 1990s, they had broken up. Steve Shelsky took his experiences composing songs like Monkey Bars to the TV screen, writing theme songs. As the hopes for stardom disappeared, along with the big hair and the waistline, the memories lived on.
It's a bit of a letdown, but you come to the realization that perhaps you had a good shot and you didn't achieve stardom, but you had a really good ride along the way, and it was fun, it was great. You met some great people, had some great experiences, and you take those experiences along with you, and you apply them to the things you do later on in life. It all works out, such as being able to chat about Monkey Bars.